Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala, up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James. It's over. It's over. Cleveland is a city of champions once again. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.
That sound means it's time for a Cavs on the Break NBA podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. I'm your host, Chase Smith, and with me, he covers your Cleveland Cavaliers. He is the founder of AmicoHoopsNews.com, writer for Outkick.com, the one, the only Sam Amico. Sam, it's draft night, baby. It's here.
Wow, it's really kind of over, but it felt like it was like 4 years for me because I was updating Amico Hoops.
Yeah.
And then I was also doing a pick by pick kind of fun. I wouldn't call it analysis. It was me making snarky comments, but I did every pick, all 30 picks. So I started at 8:00 and, so it lasted a while.
And
but it beats real work.
Now that covers all the NBA now, not just the Cavs, right? You kind of pivoted that a little bit.
Yeah, I do stress the Cavs on there still.
Right.
But yes, we still do all the NBA, and by we, it's me and Chris Kraus, who used to write for hoopsrumors.com, is fantastic. And he's been a huge help. So, but I still try to cover the Cavs like a beat writer along with putting all the other NBA news on there that I can manage to get up there in the short amount of time I have.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we do both. But to answer your question in a much longer way than you probably wanted, yes, we still do the Cavaliers.
We got to get your site mate Chris on the pod, man.
Yeah, I mean he's great. He's a much better talker than me, that's for sure.
I don't know about
that. He just sounds more professional.
Yeah,
which really isn't hard to do. But
last year's draft, we had the one and only Jeremy and Akron join us, and we talked about the Cavs draft in 2019. We had a big draft, 3 picks in the first round, or 2 picks in the first round, 1 in the upper second round, and was received pretty well. So we figured we would bring someone on tonight, Sam, to join to talk about the NBA with us. This cat is one of the newest hosts of the Press Play Podcast Network. His podcast, Ramblings of a Pastor, launches in January. Known this guy for numerous years. Loves the NBA. He's a Pistons fan. Chris Mikesell. Chris, thanks for joining the show and your network debut, man.
Hey, I made it.
Yes,
I'm a real guy now. I feel good. No, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Excited. Hey, let's jump right in, man. Appreciate you being on, Chris. Sam, obviously we had a draft. We haven't had an episode since August. A lot's happened in the NBA since August. There's a new NBA champion. I lost my NBA bet wager that I had on LeBron. That was a sad day. But LeBron did win the Finals MVP. Lakers won the championship. This is a Cavs pod. There wasn't really much to talk about with the Cavs not playing anything, not doing anything. So the draft is here. The Cavs had the 5th pick in the draft for a second year in a row. And this is how the draft went. We're going to get to the Cavs pick at 5. I want to run through the top couple of picks here. Edwards 1 went to the Timberwolves. At 2, Williamson went to the Warriors, which, I mean, just a side, tough break for Klay Thompson, man. I mean, just that's got to be just.
It doesn't sound good, that's for sure.
No. LaMelo Ball goes to the Hornets. At 3, Patrick Williams. At 4 goes to the Bulls. And at 5, the Cavs took all the time on the clock. Sam, you texted me that they were aggressively trying to trade the pick. What was the thought really with that move? That didn't happen. We took a player, but what was the thought with them trying to trade the pick?
Well, I think that they were taking calls on the pick. I don't know that Kobe Altman was like trying to get rid of it. But I know that they had been taking some calls. They've been taking calls at least since the beginning of the day, maybe since yesterday. Mm-hmm. And I think that, we heard the talk of them potentially moving back in the draft with the Knicks. They had talked to the Knicks. I know that they talked to the Celtics. The Celtics were kind of offering, I think it was maybe 14 and 26 or 14 and 30 for number 5. So I don't know what the conversations went, but yeah, they were using up all that time because they were still talking to people who were making offers. So, but as we saw, eventually they took Okoro and from all, by all accounts, they're going to go to camp with them. And the camp starts in less than 3 weeks. So he was the player at the top of their draft board at that point, and that's who they went with.
Sam, was there talks of the Cavs moving up in the draft? Any was that a discussion, or were they happy with kind of what was available at 5?
I was told probably a month ago, right after the lottery, that they maintained that they were happy at 5. They clearly, you can't be as happy at 5 as you would have been at 1, 2, or 3. But after the message was, we're not going to move this pick or work hard to move it up. If you want to move up in the draft, obviously you got to take your pick and trade a player. Presumably a younger player. And I don't feel like the Cavs felt like this draft was the draft to do that. So I think that all the conversations they had were, would it be worth moving back for multiple picks?
Yeah. Chris, you're a huge Pistons fan. They have made a lot of trades, a lot of moves this draft. What does that make you feel when your team is trading picks and pretty active and just moving all over the place?
Well, it's pretty whirlwind, especially compared to other drafts where we've just seemed to kind of take our trade or take our pick and kind of move on. This has been pretty cool to see all the moving and shaking. And it started a little bit, 2 days ago when the Pistons traded Bruce Brown. And I follow a lot of people on Pistons Twitter, and they were like flipping out thinking we traded LeBron James, because the Pistons have not had a lot of people to be excited about. So they were excited about this Bruce Brown guy, 2nd round pick, started a couple years ago. And so we have a tendency of overvaluing our picks. I don't know if Cavs fans do the same, but we as Pistons fans, we tend to overvalue our people. So seeing him trade, and then the big one was seeing Luke Kennard get traded for the 19th pick, because there were rumors that he could get traded for the 10th pick a few months ago. And so seeing him go for the 19th, that was kind of hard for a lot of Pistons fans to get their mind around, but it seemed to work out, or we'll see.
Yeah, I don't know if the Cavs fans like overvalue their picks. I know every fantasy over in every team and every league overvalues every one of their picks and players. I don't know if the Cavs, I don't know. Sam, would you say the Cavs fans typically overvalue and overhype their picks?
No, I think they go the opposite way.
Yeah, it's a pretty rough crowd.
Always the worst pick they ever could have made.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to take off what Chris was saying, the Pistons to me had a draft this year like the Cavs did last year.
Yeah.
Whereas they were the kind of like the talk of the first round. And it's very true. The Pistons, usually it's like, oh, the Pistons are picking, they're going to take their pick and move on. So it's been a they really made all the noise this year. They made up for it. But Kennard had a real good year last year. I thought, at least at the beginning of the season, and former Mr. Basketball in Ohio. It'd be interesting to see him with the Clippers and how he fits in there. So, but I got to tell you, the Pistons are moving and shaking.
Yeah, I think it was interesting because you saw Weaver trade 2 guys who are going to be eligible for extensions. And so seeing Kennard, injury history, all that stuff, like, do you want to pay a guy with bad knees 14 to 17 million, which for the Pistons, he definitely would have got. I think he's probably going to look at whatever Joe Harris gets this year, and that's what's good. He's going to want. And so it seems like it's going to be in that range. And for the Pistons, that just doesn't make sense. So seeing them trade back and getting some young guys, and it seems like they went for role players this year, where next year seems to be a lot of stars potentially in the 2021 draft from what I've heard. So that was interesting.
It does feel like the Cavs are maybe a year ahead of the Pistons in whatever phase they're in, which is funny because we have Drummond and he's signed with us again. So there's like this weird connection there between Detroit and Cleveland, and it just kind of continues. Well, no one's listening to this podcast caring anything about it. So let's talk about the Cavs.
I have a question for Sam. If I can ask it. So with Okoro, do you think that they drafted because they wanted the position more than the top player? Because you heard Toppin a lot. You had all these high,
it's all about defense.
All these high potential players. Do you think? But they didn't seem to have a lot of wings or shooting guards in Okoro's position on the Cavs currently. Or do you think having Love scared them away from somebody like Toppin?
I don't think they were scared. I think that they thought now looking back on it, they really don't have anybody who can defend on the perimeter.
Nope.
And that is supposed to be Okoro's strength. He was supposed to be the best perimeter defender in the draft. So, I think you look at that. I mean, there were times last year when they would try to sell Cedi Osman as their perimeter defender and how he was getting better, but then he just progressively got worse at that. Now he's fine. But he's not a lockdown guy. Now, ideally, theoretically, you want a lockdown guy out there. You need somebody out there who can defend on the perimeter. And
Cedi's locking down the girls, man. That's all he's locking down.
There you go. Right. So, I mean, if that's what you're drafting kind of for need, they do need a small forward, and offensively, they look at him as a guy. Okay, ideally, he's going to be able to run the floor with our three young guards, which is Colin Sexton, Darius Garland, and Kevin Porter Jr., and run the floor and finish, but mostly drafted him for defense. So I think he was just mostly the guy at the top of their draft board, and that's who you take on draft night.
The more, Chris and Sam, I read about Isaac Okoro, the more excited I get. I feel like, so let's go over his draft card. Then I'll share my opinion. Then I'll toss it to you guys. We drafted Isaac Okoro at the 5th pick, small forward out of Auburn. He's 6'6". He's a freshman. He was described as a 3-and-D guy without the 3, which I don't know in this season of NBA is kind of what you're going for. But he is the best defender, the best perimeter defender in the draft, an explosive athlete. He can guard multiple positions. He can switch on screens efficiently and effectively. He's a smart player. He makes good basketball decisions. He's great at creating a shot and drawing fouls. He's not a good free throw shooter, though. SB Nation says he's an impact defender from day one. And when you look at the Cavs' weakness for the past couple years, it has been on defense. We are the league's worst defensive team since LeBron left. And also you couple that with how he doesn't need to dominate the ball, where you have high usage players like Sexton. We haven't really seen Garland be fully unleashed yet, but you want to get Kevin Porter involved because of what he showed last year. I looked at this pick and I'm going to say something, Sam, and we're going to get to a segment in a second, but I saw Bickerstaff have a huge input into this pick because it reminded me of a Grind City pick. It reminded me of, this guy is, I see a lot of like the Tony Allen, Zach Randolph, Memphis Grizzlies kind of DNA in this pick. And I just see him I want a guy who can ball, who can play hard, who is smart, who's going to play defense. We have people who can create shots and get buckets. We need a different kind of player. And I think he can motivate Drummond. I think he can motivate TT. I think we motivate Kevin Love. I think this is going to energize exactly what the Cavs needed. And it just reminded me of some Grindhouse stuff. I don't know, Grind City. Sam, is that way off base?
No, that's a good analogy. I think that if he can turn out to be a more athletic version of a Tony Allen, who's kind of been a forgotten NBA player, that's certainly a nice pick for them. But yeah, the good news is, and you just read the comments about him being an immediate impact defensively and making that impact defensively. That's somebody they're going to need. That's been their main weakness. Now you have Drummond at the basket to protect the basket, which they were lacking for the longest time.
Yep.
And they you hope to have filled another need with this guy being a top-notch defender. Now, you hope that he turns out more of the Grind City guy than a Michael Kidd-Gilchrist guy, because he can't really shoot. So there's sometimes guys are so bad offensively that you can't put them on the floor. I don't know that that's going to be the case, but it's just kind of playing devil's advocate there.
Do you think he could start day one? Like, is he already up on the pecking order?
I would say yes, just because we don't have a small forward.
Well, you've got Cedi, who's got experience playing in those situations. You also have to remember Dylan Windler is coming in, who I saw play a couple times as an outstanding athlete and a really good shooter, and I think a solid enough defender.
So do you think having Windler this season didn't it kind of eliminated the need of getting an outside shot. Because, I mean, you're not making this pick thinking, oh, he's going to help space the floor. You're making this pick because what he brings on the defensive end and what he does in transition, and the flexibility he gives on defense. We didn't see Windler at all last year. That's almost like another pick this year, if you want to think about it that way, like another asset.
Right. Well, that's it. He's a rookie. That's your other first round pick is Windler this year.
Mm-hmm.
I did go down to Canton for the Canton Charge game and saw him play one game down there and talked to him a little bit after. He only played one game down there, hadn't played any NBA games. He looked like Larry Bird down there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was just lighting guys up in like 5 minutes. But going back to your point, Chase, yeah, I think that you look at, okay, you're going to assume Garland's going to, take the next step this year, and he's a perimeter guy. You're going to assume Windler's going to come in and knock it down, and he's a perimeter guy. And you're going to assume that Jetty is going to be able to continue to, develop outside shots. I don't think Kevin Love's going anywhere despite all the rumors.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you do have guys who are going to be able to knock it down, presumably. And then you throw in a guy who's more of a slasher and a defensive player. Hopefully he'll fit.
It's interesting you bring up Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. That was one of the comps in my brain that I had, like worst case scenario, he is him. I want to throw another one out there. Now, listen, not to get too hyperbolic, okay, because one of the major differences is wingspan. The guy I'm going to mention has about a half a foot larger wingspan, but kind of similar card out of college. Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi's 6'7", Okoro's 6'6". One of the knocks against Kawhi was, hey, he's not a consistent shooter, but a lot of the similar kind of things you're hearing about Okoro, you heard about Kawhi coming out of college. Athletic, good in transition, perimeter D guy, smart basketball. I don't know. I'm just saying, like, that could be a really, like, if you're thinking about like what would be his ceiling. I mean, obviously just a fraction of like Kawhi would be awesome, but I don't think that's too far fetched.
I'm going to let Chris take that because you're talking like a Pistons fan now.
That's funny. No, I could see the comp for sure with Leonard. I think that'd be the best case scenario, right? To see it, but
it'd be the absolute best case scenario.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm talking like a Cleveland fan, Sam. Come on,
no,
man.
I
that was
get
the
that.
Browns fan in me coming out there.
I feel that. You're gonna dig for any comp you can, man. Let's go.
Yeah, but,
you.
Hey, I mean, honestly, Kawhi Leonard went 15th, right? Was it 15th in the draft when he was selected? So it's a very, and Chris Grant, the former Cavs GM, told me this, and boy, was he evidence of what he said, is that the draft is just a very inexact science. You're basing it all. It's not, I think he said, it's not like you're going out and buying a vacuum cleaner and you know which kind you're going to get. It's a human being, and there are a lot of different elements to us. So
it does sound though that I think for a different reason, like Kawhi Leonard didn't have a lot of expectations because Tim Duncan was on the team and Ginobili and Parker and all that stuff. But it does seem like Okoro's stepped into a position where he could slowly develop his offense because you have Sexton and Garland and Love. You're not expecting him to come in and do anything offensively. So he could have that while the team's not projected the same way as like the Spurs were. You do have this guy who can slowly develop his offensive game because that's not expected from him off the bat, because you have other people that are willing to shoot and willing to score.
Look, I'm not saying that we draft the next Kawhi Leonard. I don't want that to be the lead in Sam's
That's
website.
what I heard.
Do it. Just shoot
Now,
your
if you
shot,
want to get
man.
clicks, go for it.
And then if it happens, you're the first one.
All I'm saying is, if we're throwing out Michael Kidd-Gilchrist and saying, "Yo, we got the next MKG or whatever," like that's not a compliment. That's like that's a bust. Like I think we need to be fair and say, hey, like there are a lot of similarities in those two players. Now, granted, Kawhi's wingspan 7'3", which is just absurd. Okoro's is like 6'9". So so I mean that matters in basketball. But like you look at kind of what their strengths are, and like I don't know, I think it's not out of the realm of Chase is insane. Why does he have a mic? I think like I don't know. Sam, you weren't happy with that at all.
I have asked myself that question before, but not tonight. No, I'm just kidding.
Right,
Um,
right.
no, I mean, look, we're going to find out in a while. And like Chris said, I think that the nice thing about it is, even though he is the number 5 pick, you're not hoping that he immediately turns into your guy. He probably isn't going to be that guy, but um, you can be patient with him and bring him in slowly. And I bet I think he's the type of guy, at least from what I've seen, is he's going to be the type of guy to kind of energize the team, give them a little bit of lift, maybe a spark off the bench if he's not starting.
Sam, is this more level-headed? A Jaylen Brown comp?
Of who?
Jaylen Brown for the Celtics.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't know. That's still pretty doggone good. Yeah, if he could turn out like Jaylen Brown, I think that everybody will be absolutely thrilled. But and there's no saying that he can't. But Jaylen Brown can hit outside shots pretty well, I think. So,
But could he when he was a rookie? Like when he came in,
he came in as a guy who was known for the same things, kind of a slasher, good athlete, who could finish, and wasn't a great shooter. Now he can do that. Guys, look, they put up so many shots at practice every day.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not a good shooter, by the time you're in the middle of your first season, then you probably won't ever be one, because they put up, I mean, we're talking 500 shots a day from some of these guys.
Sam, do you think a guy like Okoro, does not having summer league really hurt him? Do you think that could have really benefited somebody like him to get shots up, to kind of do those things, not having that and going right into preseason and right into the season? Do you think somebody like him that could really hurt?
That's going to be tough for probably all the guys, but yeah, particularly somebody like him, who's not getting the normal kind of access to the NBA calendar and the NBA schedule with the summer league, some early training camp. I mean, for the most part, now the NBA is going to allow some group workouts, which isn't the same thing, but they're going to allow some group workouts, I guess, in a week or so before camp. So it's going to be tough, because you're going to be a rookie going right into training camp with all the veterans who have been there 100 times. There's not going to be really any time to feel your way around. Now, the good news for Okoro is he's going to have more time in training camp than is normally afforded people. Usually it's training camp and then you're almost right into the season, but now there's going to be 21 days to get used to everything. So by the time the regular season starts, he should feel more comfortable certainly than a lot of times that rookies do. So there's both good and bad, but yeah, missing the summer league is going to be tough for everybody, because you don't have any of that extra coaching that you would normally get.
I want to ask a couple questions. We're going to do one of our segments that we like to do here. It's called Overreactions or On Point. I'm going to make a statement, and you guys tell me if that's an overreaction or if that's kind of on point with what we have here. Okay, we'll start with this one, and you guys touched on it a little bit earlier. Isaac Okoro will start for the Cavs game 1 in December. Sam, is that an overreaction or on point?
I'm going to say overreaction, but and only because they've had a guy starting there for so long. Not so long, but since LeBron left, basically Jitty has been starting. So it's going to take a little bit to take away his starting spot, I think.
Okay, Chris, from the outside, you feel like he will be slotted in, or do you think the Chetty's going to hold off?
I think Chetty will probably hold him off for now. I think it'll just depend on a lot, probably what they do with Sexton, Garland, all that stuff, if they shift roles or whatever. And Kevin Porter Jr. too, right? Like, what does he slot in as a shooting guard more than a small forward? Like, where's he?
More of a shooting guard, but they also use him at small forward, and then you got Windler too, who plays both of those spots. So
yeah,
be interesting.
I think.
Yeah, I mean, this is small ball NBA today, so who knows? All 5 could be on the floor at the same time anymore.
Yeah, it probably depends on how advanced Okoro is defensively. If he comes in just blows everybody out defensively and they get sick of getting scored on, that might be his ticket in quickly. But
All right. Well, this is going to sound like a stupid question coming up next. Will Sexton ever come off the bench at any point in this coming season?
Not unless he's hurt.
Mhm.
I don't think he's going to come off the bench in Cleveland. I don't think that's what the Cavs are looking at him as. Maybe at some point in his career, should he be traded or end up with another team, then maybe he's kind of that Lou Williams role. But that's not what the Cavs have planned for him. As far as everything I could tell is they want him to continue to be the guy that he is.
So who's the odd man out with that young core? You do have a pretty fascinating young core in Sexton, Garland, Kevin Porter Jr., and now Okoro. Who's the odd one out there?
If I had to make a pick, and this isn't, again, it's a gut feeling, I would say Garland. I that would just be my guess. He's got a ways to go.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he started last year, it was more of a throw him to the wolves kind of move. And I don't know that they know that Garland and Sexton will work together. And if Garland has a better year this year, and he's still not a fit with Sexton, you can always move him. You can move him for somebody who's a better fit, and maybe even a big guy of some sort. So, it's an experiment with Garland. So I would say he would be the odd man out, at least in my mind.
Do you think they were trying? Have you heard at all of teams were trying to poach him during the draft at all? Like trying to buy low on him?
I hadn't heard anything about either Sexton or Garland in terms of trades. I think most people realize that the Cavs are kind of committed to them, at least for now. And nobody's going to give you what the Cavs suspect is going to be their value either this year or next year. So didn't hear much about that, but it wouldn't be surprising if, because most teams who are calling you for trades are looking for your veterans, because these are the Lakers, the Clippers, the Celtics, the Heat. These teams that are ready to win right now are trying to get your veterans, because really in the playoffs, that's what gets it done is veterans. It's very rarely younger players. The Cavs did get some calls, but it was mostly on Love and some of those. I would say Love would be the guy they took the most calls about.
It's a perfect segue to the next question on the greatest segment ever, overreactions and on points. And I'll let you decide if that's an overreaction or if that's on point. The Cavs will make one big trade this year. Sam, overreaction or on point?
On point.
Ooh.
I'm gonna go with on point there. I don't know that they'll trade Kevin Love, but we look at Kobe Altman's history. Mm-hmm. I mean, 2018 when LeBron was still there, he blew up the roster at the trade deadline. If you remember that, I think he traded 6 guys.
Yeah,
with Isaiah Thomas and Derrick Rose and Dwayne Wade.
All
those guys were on the team, and he traded them all.
Yeah.
And then last year at the trade deadline, nobody saw the Andre Drummond trade coming.
Chris, did you?
No. Well, I think they wanted him traded, but you should have seen Pistons Twitter. They thought that you just cut their hearts out. Like they were so offended that they got a terrible second round pick, and the people that really knew were like, the Pistons didn't want him to opt into his trade exception. Right. And this is why, if I can segue to the Pistons for a second. So the Pistons traded for Trevor Ariza and the 16th pick. That doesn't happen if Drummond opts into his deal. And so this is exactly why they traded him for just a terrible second round pick, because they wanted the flexibility around the draft to take on somebody's bad contract to take a first round pick. So but yeah, no one saw that coming. Not for a terrible second round pick. It was hilarious.
The Cavs do seem to have a lot of random pieces, a lot of bigs, a lot of just pieces. And I would agree, Sam, that there's got to be some concoction of a trade somewhere, 3-teamer or whatever, especially you have Daryl Morey now in the East, just a whole new avenue of phone calls and conversations that they've never had before. I just think like something is going to work somehow. I feel like Kevin Love is destined for a Daryl Morey offense.
Well, isn't Larry Nance the guy? Like if there's going to be a trade, he seems to be isn't he under a decent contract?
Yes.
Still young.
And all of a sudden his name is being thrown around a lot. I don't think by the Cavs, but by teams with interest like We've heard earlier this summer that Boston really loves him. And you're right. He's the guy with a good contract. He's younger, and
And whenever he got minutes, I had him on a fantasy team. So whenever he got minutes, I really enjoyed because he produced pretty well.
He
right?
does. He'll put up numbers when he's out there. He's developed an outside shot, which I don't want to say he wasn't very good at that before, but now it's much more reliable. He's extended his range. He's worked hard at that, and he's the guy I think a lot of people will be coming after.
And the Celtics still didn't draft a big, really, in the draft. Really, they didn't really address that, right? And so he still could be a target for him.
Yes, I have no doubt he will be for them. And I saw him linked to a couple other teams, maybe Miami or somebody. But it'll be interesting to see. To answer your question, Chase, I say yes. They're going to make some kind of big deal before the end of the season.
I agree as well. All right, two more. Sam, the Cavs will make the playoffs and beat the Pistons in a division. Overreactions are on point.
So you're asking me if I think both the Cavs and the Pistons will be in the playoffs. That's what you're saying. Well, you know what they have now.
No, because I'll save my Pistons remark for my next question.
Okay, I don't think the Cavs will. Well, I don't know because they have the play-in game, right? Mm-hmm. So both conferences 7 through 10. So basically, you're asking me if I can count the play-in game. I think the Cavs have a shot at 10 in the Eastern Conference. Mm-hmm. Now, again, how they're constructed December 1st may be quite a bit different than, March or April. So, but I'm just for the sake of the question, I'll say yes, they will get that 10th spot.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, baby.
Oh, the number 10. The Pistons punted when they traded Kennard. They're not going for the 10th spot. So maybe, but more than likely they're trying to get a high pick next year.
That leads me to our final question, Chris.
That's true.
The Pistons will be in the lottery again. Overreaction or on point?
Oh, 100% on point. They're going to try to give Griffin as much of the ball as possible so they can trade him at the deadline when there's only a year and a half left on that huge contract. I think that's the
left
dream.
On his knees.
Yeah.
Or they'll just play him every other game. It's one of the two. Like they're either going to play him like every other game or they're going to try to trade him. But right now he has no value, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Well,
you forgot the most important question of the day, probably.
What's that?
Tristan Thompson, will he be back with the Cavaliers?
Ooh, I'm assuming he is. Has that not been final?
I'm assuming he's not.
Oh.
I just think there's too much that's going to pull him away, especially with Drummond back. He'd be coming off the bench. He's an unrestricted free agent. I just think somebody's going to pay him more than the Cavs are going to be willing to pay him, and I think he's going to take less to go to
the
Lakers or the Clippers, but probably the Lakers.
Yeah.
I've heard the Lakers have to decide between Dwight Howard and Tristan Thompson.
Ooh.
And I think that's a no-brainer. You take Tristan at this point in the career.
Well, he's so much younger. I think we forget how young he is. He's still like mid-20s, right?
He's like 28, maybe 27, 28, somewhere in there. Well, he's drafted 2011 at the age of 19, I believe. So, he'd be 9 years ago. Yeah. So he'd be 27, 28 right
But
there.
Age is arbitrary. It's all about minutes and wear and tear.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about looks. And the three of us got him.
Yes.
Sam is on a whole nother level. Like I think after like 11:45 at night, like the Sam filter is gone. He's like, "Yo, podcast after dark. Let's do it, man."
Yeah.
the draft nights, man.
Dude, I'm sure your brain is fried. Well, that is that wraps up the greatest segment of all time. Again, I'll let you decide if that's an overreaction or on point. And that also does it for the greatest podcast of all time here. I want to give shouts to Chris for coming on and joining us in this kind of Cavs recap. Sam, shouts to you. Thank you for coming on and sharing your expertise and knowledge. Thank you so much for downloading and listening to this podcast, to this show. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Cavs on the Break. We always follow back. Shouts to the Press Play Podcast Network for making this possible. Sam, where can we follow you and catch some of your stuff at?
You can follow me at Amico Hoops on Twitter, and my website, amicohoopsnews.com. That's Amico Hoops, NEWS, not Amico Hoops Snooze, as my kids like to call it. And
Man,
then
tough crowd.
yeah. And then I also do my actual full-time job is Outkick.com, where I do a lot of NBA stuff there. So, but I mean, AmicoHoopsNews.com never rests, and you get more exhilarating goofiness like this there too.
Check it out. Make sure to click that stuff. Chris, where can we follow you? And tell us a little about this podcast that's launching in January, man.
Yeah, so we're doing this Rambling with a Pastor podcast. I've had this vision for a while. Chase and I have been talking for a long time about launching this on the network, but it's a chance where we can kind of talk about things in the world, in our culture, and from a little bit of a faith perspective. As a young pastor, kind of young now, I'm 33, still feel young, but as a young pastor, trying to figure out how where faith fits with everything going on in our culture, and especially now with the pandemic and coming out of it. So we're going to just kind of talk about that, what that means, what Jesus talks about with it, how we should act as believers if we are one. And really the theme coming into this kind of first season is the comeback. Like, how do we come back in 2021 with this world as a new normal? So we're going to talk to some people and have some thoughts about it and see where it lands.
And look,
but I'm excited about it. I'm really
excited. If anyone
about
knows about faith and coming back from a terrible season, it's Pistons fans. So
yes,
excited to have
Pistons fans, Michigan fans, Lions fans, just Tiger, all of it.
You're all of them?
I'm all of it.
Oh,
I'm used to it.
Man, that's rough. Holy
I'm used
folks.
to it. Yeah, we don't even have our Red Wings anymore as anchors. Like,
they were such a power too for so long.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the 90s, they just killed. Sam, any final thoughts, brother?
That's it. I just, Chris, you'll be happy to know I'm surrounded by Detroit fans. My wife's one side of the family's all Detroit fans, and then sadly my side of the family is all from Pittsburgh. So they're that's worse.
The P word. Man.
Yeah.
I'm going to bleep that out.
They always, you know what? My family always calls it the Berg, and I'm like, you guys go ahead and keep calling it the Berg. Here in Cleveland, we call it the Pits.
Yes.
So, yeah, that's about all I got. That's my dad joke of the night.
Perfect.
But other than that, no, I mean, hey, NBA basketball is really, it's back, and it's good for everybody. I think
it's back. It's going to dominate the news because you got free agency, you got trades, and then all of a sudden the season's going to start in a month, and it's not going to stop. And Sam, we're here for it. Sam wants to get to 100 episodes by the end of the season, so we'll be coming at you every other day, maybe twice a day. So hope you guys are ready. All right,
that's my goal.
Hey, Chris, since it's your first time on the network, man, how about you take us out, brother?
Yes, Mike Breen, take us out.
Congratulations, Cleveland. Your decades-long wait is finally over. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.